Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Doug Merrett from Platinum 7. In the first half, we covered the technical side of Salesforce security, what's changing, and where the biggest risks lie. Now we're getting into the human side, the habits, processes, and culture that help keep your organization secure. So let's jump straight in. I guess let's bring it back to what we can probably recommend for somebody to start today. You work with customers every day. You know, I particularly hear the posture of building security into the culture of your organization. Now that's a change management piece from organizations themselves. But if you can recommend practical things to go along with that, where would you start, or where do you recommend people start?
I recommend running the Salesforce health check. That's a really good start because it gives you some really good low-hanging fruit around things you should look at fixing in your Salesforce org. Not everything Salesforce lists as critical is critical in my opinion. It's their opinion, and in my opinion is different. That's perfectly okay. In the top grouping, it's in multiple groups, so they have multiple groups of different findings, and the top level groups are most important, and the other ones below are less important. But they're still critical, high, medium, low, etc. in each section. So the top section, definitely look at doing all those things. The second, third, and fourth sections, have a good look at them. They're probably worthwhile. They won't hurt. It's probably a good thing to do anyway. So look at the health check. Other than that, there's a really good security implementation guide that Salesforce have out there, which will help you understand how to set up your environment more securely. Really, your sharing rules are very important. How you set up your sharing, how you set up your personas. So Salesforce are moving away from profiles to keep permissions in nowadays. They're suggesting permission sets and permission set groups. So your profile really should have nothing in it except for what's the default page layout, what's the time and date you can log in, etc., that sort of stuff, your IP restrictions, those types of things. That's what your profile should be used for. Everything else should be a permission set or permission set group. And so you should look at your group of users and say, well, who are my users? I've got customer service reps, I've got salespeople, I've got manufacturing people. What do they need? And then group them like that. And obviously a sales manager may be slightly different to a sales rep. They've got the same basic information requirements, but a sales manager may have a few more. So that's where you have a permission set group. Have it like permission set for sales guys and then a permission set extra for sales managers, and you add them together and give it to that person. So that's something really important. Look at using event monitoring as well. Event monitoring is an add-on product from Salesforce. It is something which will materially increase the security of Salesforce org if you implement it properly. And I'll be publishing a blog on that soon about how to configure it in the basics and what you can do to make it more secure as well around that. I think event monitoring is very powerful because they've just recently introduced an adapter to connect the event monitoring logs into Data Cloud, which is where you can start using Salesforce Einstein Artificial Intelligence. And I can see that going to be wonderful because that will really help with the anomaly detection. Because when you start looking at what people do on a day-to-day basis, if you understand what normal looks like, when they start doing something that's not normal, that's when you should go have a look and see what's happening. You can stop them doing something obviously bad, like you shouldn't be exporting PII data with a report, for example, right? And you can stop that with a Salesforce transaction security policy, which is part of event monitoring. But if Trent's on a daily basis looking to do A, B, and C, and he does that all the time, but all of a sudden Trent starts doing something really weird, it's like, well, hang on a sec, is that really Trent? Or is Trent being asked to do something by somebody else and he shouldn't be doing it, that sort of stuff. So the anomaly detection is really important, and I think that Salesforce are doing a lot with that, which is going to be great. It's one of the future things coming down the line. So that's looking forward to that. But in general, use the health check, really work out who should be seeing what data, and really minimize. It's called the least privilege principle. Just give people only what they need to do their job, nothing more.
I have to admit, a few times in the past where I've spoken to people in the security realm that have, not in Salesforce specifically, obviously, but in their other systems, they've detected intrusions or threats. It's mostly through that event or that anomaly detection that they seem to stumble upon it. Without that bit of toolkit in your tool bag, it's obviously sounds like it's going to be a much harder task to do that. What about non-technical people in your organization? What habits could they build or do?
Well, one of the things I think companies should do is the company should teach all their employees about cybersecurity, and not just at work, for home as well. I mean, it's coming up to Christmas time and people are going to be getting online trying to buy stuff. There's a lot of scams out there as well. So educating people around just good general security is important. So being aware of what cyber really means, and things like just letting people know that no one from IT is going to call them to help them install an app, that type of stuff, right? Just make people think about things before they click the button. Now, the trouble is, the human is the last line in the whole process. Hackers have got to do a whole bunch of stuff to get to them, but you should never, ever, ever blame the user, because the user, it's not their fault. The system should have stopped it getting there in the first place. But the point is, the humans are the last line of defense. And so if you can just help that extra little bit to just educate people about what is good practice when it comes to security. Yes, you can use credit cards on the internet as long as you make sure that of certain things, right? You make sure the URL is a proper URL. You don't click a link. You actually type in amazon.com.au, for example, that type of stuff. So just good basic hygiene is something you should look at doing across your whole org. And so if you don't have a security department, there's a really good bunch of information up on the web from the Australian government, the cyber group, which is the Australian Signals Directorate, ASD. They're the equivalent of what the NSA is to the Americans. So the Australian Signals Directorate will help you understand a bit more about cyber. And if you're a business, you should become a partner of that group, because they will actually give you a lot of guidance around actually what you should be doing to tie your Windows security down really well, etc., etc. It's a really good thing to hop onto.
I think that sometimes we often have a situation where there's so much information out there. It's really good to point to some of them that are really useful, and things that are supported by the government are obviously there in line with legislation in Australia here as well. So that's amazing. But outside of that, that's inward facing for an organization. What about outward facing? What about transparency to customers and regulators? What does that look like for organizations on Salesforce?
Yeah, it's very interesting, because when you look externally, especially in the marketing space now, with the privacy laws being modified over the next period of time, we're going to see a lot more interest in the whole granting of permission to use my data. So the consent stuff is going to become really important. And that's where I think you should be broadcasting what your privacy policies are to your customers. So every website should have a policy saying, this is my privacy policy, this is what data I'm going to collect on you, this is what I'm going to do with it, this is what's going to happen. And that's something I think everyone should look at. When it comes to compliance in your financial services, there's things, if you're APRA regulated, that's the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, they actually have got rules that you're supposed to go by. So things like CPS 234 and that sort of stuff. You've got to comply with these sort of things if you're in that sort of space. If you're in health, you've got things to comply with. They're obviously very sensitive data you're keeping. But actually, I do a lot of work with not-for-profits, and they store some seriously sensitive data, and unfortunately don't have the same budget as a lot of corporates. So it's always interesting to see what you should be doing facing outwards, and you should be really tracking what your group of companies are facing. So like marketing have got the new privacy laws coming up. Actually, everyone has new privacy laws coming up. You've got that sort of stuff to think about, and what should you be doing inside your Salesforce environment to make sure that you're complying with that is always part of the fun as well, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if a lot of customers actually realize how many resources internally are from Salesforce to help maintain this. Things like accreditations in their industry or things like that. I remember in the PubSec days, we were enormously excited when Salesforce received its IRAP certification. So those things can all be found on, I believe it's trust.salesforce.com, and contain information about where that security or data is stored in each of the modules inside of Salesforce.
Yep.
It's certificates that they've received, penetration testing results from third parties that they've done on the platform. So I would encourage any customer that's interested to take the time to ask their account teams to point them to the right resource for whatever they need. But ultimately, it's only going to become, like you said, more important as time goes on.
Yeah, actually, there's a shortcut link. Actually, Trent, it's if you want to, you can go through trust.salesforce.com. You can get that way, but actually, it's compliance.salesforce.com is a direct link straight there. And I've actually got a blog on my Medium posts around which documents in that group I think are quite useful to look at. That will give them a lot more information, help them with the audits as well, which is great.
Well, I do want to give you the time to kind of elaborate on some of those things that you put out there. I know that you're an author on Medium. You've got your own consultancy service. Yeah, I'd love to give you the chance to talk more about that in detail and give us an understanding of where you begin and end in this whole process.
Well, I started Platinum 7 because when I was working at Salesforce and I was helping customers understand how Salesforce does what Salesforce does with security, they said, oh, that's wonderful. Who can you get to help me? And unfortunately, a lot of partners don't really have a security focus. And so I saw a bit of a gap in the market and decided that's for me, and I set up my own business to do that. So what I do for most of my customers is help them understand where they are in security. So I do assessments on their Salesforce org. So it's basically the Salesforce health check, but on super steroids. I go through, it takes me about a week to actually go and do the assessment, grabbing some background information, etc. And I give you a detailed report explaining exactly what I've found in your org, why I think it's important to change and how you can go about changing it. And if you're a not-for-profit, I'm actually part of Pledge One, so you get a discount on that as well. But on my Medium, it's not paywalled. Medium can also be a paywall. No, all my stuff is out there for free. I just want people to learn and make the environment more secure. So I'm happy to talk to anybody about security. If you've got any questions, just please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or via my website. Just get in touch. Happy to help. And in any way I can, even just give you some guidance. A freebie phone call is not a problem. Happy to do that. No problem at all.
Awesome. That has been an awesome conversation. I don't think I've spoken this much about security in a while, so it's also a good refresher for myself. But look, thank you so much for joining us. All of Doug's details will be down in the comments of where that you are watching this snippet or this recording. So feel free to reach out to Doug for any questions or read his blogs. They're a really good read if you're interested in this kind of stuff. If I had to boil it all down, it's that Salesforce security isn't something you can set and forget. It's about understanding how your systems connect, where the risks really are, and how to build good habits across every team in your organization, not just IT. So thank you again, Doug, for joining us. The changes coming over the next few years are really going to be exciting and reshape how we all use Salesforce. But it's been a pleasure to discuss this with you.
Thanks a lot, Trent. Really appreciate your time. And thanks, Double H, for putting these sort of really good podcasts out there.